You're listening to Men of Abundance, episode 197, with Daniel Hanzelka. Amongst many other things, Daniel and I are going to be talking about resetting your money and how the truth doesn't set you free unless you know the truth. But what if the truth is being kept from you?
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
What is going on, Men of Abundance? I am Wally Carmichael, your founder and host of the Men of Abundance podcast, the Pay It Forward community, and I am tongue-tied already, and I'm just getting started. And today we're talking with Daniel Hanzelka, and this is one of those conversations that really kind of goes all over the place. We do have structure. You're not going to get lost, but he talks about his experience in growing up in Czech Republic, what it was like, how the truth was being kept from him, which is very interesting to me. I share a little bit of a conversation about my experience in sitting down in Uzbekistan with some Russian colonel and Russian officers and enlisted soldiers. And then we kind of get into some just amazing conversation about everything from goal setting and your fitness to really digging deep into resetting your money, which is really exciting. I think this whole conversation is pretty amazing, if I do say so myself. So others are going to want to listen to this, as you know. So make sure that you share Men of Abundance with everyone you come in contact with. And it's really simple. All you have to do is share menofabundance.com, write it on a piece of paper, hand it to somebody, grab somebody's phone, find their podcast player, whatever it is. If they have an iPhone, it's just the purple podcast player that's on the phone, or if they downloaded any other podcast player for their phone. There are so many out there. And subscribe them to Men of Abundance right there on the spot. It's that simple. Here's something really fun to do. Instead of grabbing somebody's phone and taking some odd pictures that they're going to find later, subscribe them to Men of Abundance and let them start getting the downloads. They're going to get the notifications on their screen and wonder, what the heck is this? They're going to listen to a few. Then they're going to figure out who was the amazing person that put this on my phone. I don't remember subscribing, but I sure am glad that they're here. Well, that's my thought process anyway. Hope it works out like that. But in any case, do what you can to make sure that others are getting access to Men of Abundance. Just let them know about it, because everything that we've done thus far at Men of Abundance, almost 200 episodes, is 100% word of mouth. I have not paid for any marketing whatsoever. And while I don't have 1 million downloads like many podcasts, I really dig all of the people that are contacting me and sharing their experience with listening to these conversations. I truly appreciate every single one of the reviews on iTunes and Stitcher and anywhere else you can leave a review. And I greatly appreciate the comments on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and all the other platforms that I'm on. Every once in a while, I'll run into somebody who I know, and it just blows my mind that they've been listening to Men of Abundance. They'll bring it up, and they say, dude, I've been listening to your show. It's pretty cool. And it's just very humbling to be able to share these conversations with you. So be abundant in your life today and pay it forward by sharing Men of Abundance with those around you. Now, our featured guest today is Daniel Hanzelka. He is a business success coach, speaker, author, and serial entrepreneur. He has 18 years experience in the financial services industry as a financial advisor. Daniel now helps financial advisors scale their businesses so they can work with their right clients, make more money, and have more freedom to do what they really want to do. He is the co-creator of the Reset Formula and the Reset Method. His mission in business and in life is to empower entrepreneurs to discover the truth of the 4 core areas of life: faith, family, fitness, and finance, so they can have and experience the epic life they want. And as we'll mention later in the show, you can learn more about Daniel at resetyourmoney.com. Men of Abundance, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Daniel Hanzelka. Daniel, welcome to Men of Abundance, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Wally.
Awesome.
Appreciate being here.
Excellent. Where are you at in the world?
I'm actually from Canada. in kind of Northern Ontario, just north of Toronto, if people know where that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a couple other former guests out there, and my coach is in Canada, and I've known quite a few people there. I have not been there myself yet, but I do look forward to it.
Oh, yeah, no, it's it's not the first country where I'm originally from. I'm originally from Czech Republic, but I tell people now that my body is made in Czechoslovakia, but my brain's now Canadian, so I love it here.
That's awesome, man. I love this world we're living in. When did you leave Czech Republic?
It was in '86, so we came to Canada in January of '87. So.
And how old were you then?
I was 13.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay, so you grew up a little bit over there, so you know the difference. Because I've talked to other guys, like I've talked to guys, say, for instance, from Haiti, but they left when they were 3. So, you know, they have no recollection of their home country, so to speak, if you will.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've lived there for, the first 13 years of my life, so I do recollect a lot of it. And it was during the time when it was still communist. Essentially, that's the reason why we left, so.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. It's funny that we're having this conversation now. What is it, the 27th of February? Because just this morning, I posted in my Facebook community a live video, and I was talking about my experience when I was in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, and how I was talking about how I was talking to this Russian major, or a Russian colonel and a Russian major, some other Russian soldiers. We were sitting down eating together, and we were talking about the differences from when they grew up to the way it was then, and at the time it was 97, 98 time frame. Yeah. And so a lot of changes, and they wished that they could get out of the situation that they were in, and really wishing that we could settle our differences by sitting around a table eating food and drinking vodka, quite frankly. It's a little cliche, but we were in fact drinking vodka with the Russians.
Yeah, no, you know what? I totally agree. I mean, when we left, we actually went on a vacation to former Yugoslavia, and we were, right there where a lot of the fighting, was going on after. And it was kind of, while we were there, we didn't understand a lot of the tensions were already there with the Balkan wars of the 90s. And we kind of didn't understand what was going on, but it was quite shocking that, unfortunately, men tend to settle their differences with, shooting each other as opposed to saying, hey, you know what, we're neighbors. And some of the stories and things that have happened in the former Yugoslavia, or a lot of the, former republics, and, how even now in today, how things are settled, it's not always the most, the best way to do that. And it's unfortunate when you got neighbors, essentially killing each other, right?
It really is. It's truly sad. It really is. And while we're on this subject, one of my soapbox topics, I won't get on too much, but one of the things that I want people to understand that really don't get it is that the United States specifically, and the UK and other countries, quite frankly, I was in Russia as Partnership for Peace. I was in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. There were I think 21 different nations there. Wow. Doing this Partnership for Peace in '96, and we do it every year. And people don't know about this. And the United States and other countries have people in all over the world. We have doctors and providers all over the world. We have people all over the world that aren't fighting. They're there doing humanitarian missions. They're there doing relationship building. And we're trying to have these conversations. But whatever powers to be, I'm not going to get all political and media and all that kind of stuff on it, but other people just have agendas that completely try to completely cover that up and sabotage the whole process. But we are working hard as a world, because I've worked with other nations. I was in Sinai, Egypt for 6 months with 12 other nations down there doing the multi-skills, MFO, basically making sure that the treaty was being upheld that Carter started back in 1981. And, we're doing stuff like this all over the world, and I just want to point that out.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole thing, and I often tell people ask me, what was the difference when you grew up, under communism, and what's kind of the difference in here? And I always tell people there really isn't that much of a difference. Unfortunately, there was a lot of propaganda, and a lot of things that were happening under communism, but I think a lot of it is here too. And I think we're kind of in a great place now where, the people that really do want to find out what is the truth, what is really going on, they can. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of times the governments and media tries to skew things. We're now in an age where, if you really want to find out what the truth is, you can. because those resources are there, but they're not available to the general public. You got to dig a little bit deeper,
right,
and really find that out. But I think that's I think we live in the greatest time in history at this point because of a lot of things that have changed, and I think we all have a great opportunity to make a difference out there.
We definitely do, absolutely, 100%. And the sad part is people will believe what they want to believe, and they won't seek additional information. Absolutely agree with what you said there. So before we get too much into our conversation, Daniel, I'd like to start out with an attitude of gratitude. What do you have to be grateful for today, man?
Well, today it's those little things, and you just kind of reminded me that I'm really grateful for being here in Canada and being kind of living in the Western world, because that's kind of where my life came. I was kind of under the communist regime, but I think I kind of have the saying, every day I get to wake up here in Canada. The fact that we live in a country that there is peace. That right there, it's like winning the lottery every single day. So just the ability to be and wake up here, because I know, as we just shared, other, people in other countries don't have that luxury. And I think it's really important for us just to realize that, what we do have, where we're at, and being able to, go out there and serve others.
Yeah, absolutely. That is truly a mouthful, a lot to be thankful for, and was 100% my message that I just shared this morning. So it is absolutely no coincidence that we are having this conversation right now, because, man, I'm telling you, when I get into these conversations, I know the backgrounds of some of the guys I get a chance to talk to, but I did not know the conversation was going to go this route, and it's divine intervention, man. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Daniel, how would you describe yourself?
One of the things, and as we started talking about, and you kind of open it up a little bit more than what I even kind of had, prepared as I was preparing for this, interview kind of thing where the conversation is going to go. One of the important things for me in life, and I have the saying as far as what my purpose is to learn the truth, live the truth, and share the truth. And part of the reason that's important for me, again, with my background, and I kind of say, hey, listen, I was lied to. When I was living in Czechoslovakia at that time, by the government, by, society, by everybody, by teachers. But, more I dug into it, I said, often it goes beyond that. I feel like I was lied to before I was even born. I think there's a little bit more of a personal story when it comes to it. But, having that truth and knowing what the truth is, and as we started talking about it, is really important because, at the end, there's kind of the saying that, the truth will always, set you free. And the ironic part of that is I lived in a country where that's what was taught, even during communism, all about the truth. Yet a lot of the truth was kind of hidden from us. So that's kind of the one thing that has become important for me. And at the same time, because I kind of felt I was being lied to for most of my life, that's kind of what has driven me to become more of a high performer, action taken, kind of being really driven into what it is that I want. But the most important thing I think is that as I talk to a lot of men, they have this, same qualities, or, they really feel like they're driven and they want to accomplish more. But a lot of them kind of feel lost because they don't really know or understand, like, what is the truth? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Because there is so much misconception out there and confusion, and I think that's really important, is to be on that search and really find out, what is somebody's purpose, why they are here, and what it is that they're to do. And it sounds like you're on fire. I love meeting guys like you that know exactly what it is that they're doing and why they are here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And as you know, I'm still on my journey, man. I don't know that I have it all figured out, but I do have a very good idea of where I want to go, and who I want to bring with me, God willing.
Yeah. Well, the way that I describe it and put it that way, I'm right there with you. I don't have it all figured out, but it's kind of like this. All we need to know is the direction, and we have to move towards it. Mm-hmm. And that's often all we need. There is a great quote that I say a lot from Yogi Berra, the famous baseball player, that says, when you come to a fork in the road, take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is what it comes down to. We will never know exactly what it looks like, because it never looks like what we imagine it. Mm-hmm. But as long as we kind of have that direction and kind of have that vision where we're going, we can get there. And I guess the best example I can use is, when I think it was Kennedy once says, hey, we're going to make it to the moon. That was just a big goal. Okay, where are they going to go? He didn't worry about all of the details.
Right.
Right, and I think this is what I'm talking about with with the whole idea of the vision and where we're going. It's just what, as long as you know what direction you're heading, the clarity as you're moving towards it will become clear. You just have to start moving in that direction. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people that talk about what they want to do, but they never move.
That's so true. I always use the analogy of the frogs, the 5 frogs, Ford decided to jump off the rock. And then you ask how many frogs are left on the rock, and all 5 are still there because only 4 decided they didn't take action. And we can bring that to today's day and age. Elon Musk has said we're going to Mars. He's going to put civilians on Mars. And it's far-fetched, but I'm telling you right now, if there's anyone that could do it, it's probably him and his team. But yeah, I dig it. And then in contrast to the whole taking the right path, I just recently heard this one yesterday, reminded of in Alice in Wonderland. The Cheshire Cat says, if you don't know which way you're going, which path you take really doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, and it's so true. And unfortunately, I speak to a lot of men that are kind of there. They're lost. They're complaining they don't like to be where they're at, but they don't even know where they want to really go. So I'm going, you're exactly where you want to be. Exactly. Daniel, this is one of the, we are so in line. And reading your bio, I was like, this guy is a mirror image of me. When I get started talking with somebody, and, first thing I ask, would you like some help with that? And if they say yes, then I ask them to write down, just take 1 minute and write down as many things in your life that you want no more of, that you don't want in your life. Just write 1 minute. And they'll write this list, and it may be anywhere from 15, 20, sometimes even 30 different things that they don't want in their life. Then I'll say, okay, now take another minute and write down the things that you do want. And immediately they're stumped. They don't even really, they may write 2, 3, 5 things, 6 things, and then they're done. And they really don't really know what they want in their life, but they know plenty of what they don't want. And, as you're mentioning that, I remember... probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I just had, as we were all on this journey, I asked my wife once, I said, what, if we had $1 million, like what would we do with it? And, in my head, I could come up with a whole bunch of things, but I couldn't almost as if speak any of them. And I sat there and says, do you realize how crazy and ridiculous this is? Mm-hmm. And part of that is, again, with my background coming from communism, kind of, the poverty mindset, as I call it, or scarcity mentality, I started to realize that, I can't even imagine what it would be like, because I right away start to think about how, well, I don't have it. How can I even talk about it? And it has taken a long, some time working on myself to realize that, yeah, I very clearly can describe in the past what I didn't want and talked about it quite a bit, complained about it, if I can put in those words. But I spent very little time of saying, hey, what is it that I do want? What is it that I do want to create? And I think that's the, large shift that I have done in the last few years of saying, the more clarity you have what you want to create, the better you're going to be at and have a better chance of actually getting it.
Absolutely. Well, man, speaking of that, we are going to get into your reset formula and the reset method. I would definitely want to learn more about that. But before we do, I want to get into this kick in the gut moment that I bring up quite often. And I know you've got a few. Anybody who's moving forward and doing anything in life have more than a few. And all of us have several kick in the gut moments, regardless of where we're at in life. And you're going to continue to have kick in the gut moments. But it's what you do with those events and those moments in life that really define who you are and where you're going to go in life. So if you would, share a kick in the gut moment with us and really make us feel that.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there's quite a few of them, and as we're kind of going through it, but the one that I can describe, and 2 years ago, I guess about 2.5 years ago now, me and my wife decided to kind of go and do a little bit of real estate investing, and we bought an income property, went and did some, did the renovations, and did that, went and sold the property, and then put all of our resources, all of our money into it. Was supposed to be sold on December 23rd, and then the sale has fallen through. And the few months after that were quite, as you talk about the kick in the gut, what we have gone through, because it was quite difficult to kind of go through all of that and figure out, okay, now what are we going to do? And it's still kind of not resolved. We're still dealing with some of those challenges with the property. But really what the effect all of that was, the person that I have actually become through all that. And even though that was kind of that kick in the gut and going like, okay, what are we going to do now? I had to go and reinvent myself kind of moving forward. And as you mentioned, for many of us, it's not the first time we had to go and reinvent ourselves. But I think it's all about, building that character and who we're really becoming. And the one thing that has kind of kept me going through all of that, which is actually on the opposite, I spoke to one of my coaches once, and he mentioned this as we were kind of talking about the vision and where you want to go, and making $1 million is kind of the one thing that a lot of people want to do. And he mentioned to me saying, making $1 million is great, but just think about the person you're going to become through that process, through the lessons you're going to learn to be able to go out there and generate that money. And that has kind of what has kept me as I got that kick in the gut through that, going, okay, I'm not happy about the situation that's happening, because literally there were days where we were like going, okay, do we have enough finances right now to pay the bills today? Let's not even worry about tomorrow. Do we have enough for today? And kind of saying, okay, what is the reality? What's really going on? That has, kept us going, saying, this is all to be used for something. Even though I'm not happy about what's happening to us right now, this is in preparation for something that's going to follow down the road. And, that certainly has been the case.
Yeah, I can get that. I can feel that. And a lot of what you just said right there really drives home is true about any goal. You're talking about the $1 million, and don't strive to, like Jim Rohn used to say, don't strive to earn $1 million for the money itself, but for who you have to become along the way. And the same is true with any goal. Even, that's why when we're working with guys, personally, I like to have them set small, attainable goals and multiple times, so that they get that feeling and they get that sense and they get in their head that they can attain the goal that they set forth. And they can plan it and they can do it. And once you do that, the small ones turn into big ones, and then the big ones turn into just these big ass, hairy, audacious goals that you never even imagined you could accomplish, like sending people to Mars, putting a man on the moon type of thing. It's like, what? That doesn't even compute. But here you are 5-10 years later doing things that you never even imagined you'd be able to do.
Oh, 100%. And I think what you're mentioning about the, setting up the small goals, and there was a lot of different books, that talk on the topic. But the one story that I heard from one of my coaches was, the whole idea of, he would say, when you're looking at championships, and let's just say baseball, they're never won on the home runs, and home runs is the exciting part. That's what people want to, want to have. They want to have that big major result. He says, they're all won by, getting the men home. And his whole view was that if you go and what he called it, you go and swing for singles. What that basically meant is that every day you set out small little goals that you can accomplish. But, you just don't do them once or twice. You do them every single day, day after day and week after week. That's how you accomplish the big, the big events in your life. Like even going to, as we're talking about Elon Musk going to Mars and all this, that whole thing is going to be accomplished by small little victories that at the time may seem insignificant, but all of these trials, and I haven't really watched it. I know recently they just fired this, one of the spaceships up and sent it towards Mars, and the two, I guess the containers for the fuel landed perfectly. And I'm like looking at that. That didn't just happen. That took, small little, very insignificant steps to get to that point where everything worked out perfect. And the one thing that most people don't see, and the one thing that I value about a lot of coaches, and that's the type of coaches that I'm looking for, and what I try to do when I coach is try to tell people, everybody can show you what has worked. And, when we're on social media, everybody kind of shows you what has worked. Often we don't have an idea what didn't, right? And this is the whole thing when we're looking at even, Elon Musk with all the things. I mean, everything that he has done was very public, right? When the rockets exploded there, what was about a year ago, and the whole thing just was kind of set back, and everybody was saying, okay, well, is this like end? Okay, and it was just like, it's just all it really means is that it didn't work this way. Let's just get back to the drawing board and figure out how it's going to work. And I think, to be successful in life, we have to realize that failures and even some of these kicks in the gut are there to actually help us in the process, and they are part of the process. And I think that's kind of the hardest thing to remember, because when you're I'm going back 2 years and I'm feeling how I was feeling, and going through that, it's like I don't ever want to go through that again. but kind of knowing that chances are I probably will, and it's okay because I can go and get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And had you not gone through that, you wouldn't be where you are today.
One of the things that I say, and some people might not agree with, that I always say, listen, when I look at my life in the past, everything that has happened, it's just perfect because it has turned me into the person that I'm right now. I can't go back and change anything. And there were years, in the past that, I was kind of, I call it arguing with reality. Just to get a little bit of background, my parents divorced when I was 9 years old, and it took me 30 years to kind of get over that. And partly is because I was arguing with reality that somehow, it has injured me and it's shaped me into the man that I am, and it's not good, and I was kind of angry. And then I realized, I can either accept it as, hey, it was there because it had turned me into the man that I'm right now, or I can keep on arguing with reality. Well, I don't know how about you, but, when you argue with reality is not going to change. Reality is what it is, or what it was. You can make different decisions right now, and the future hasn't been written yet so that we can change things moving forward. But what has already happened yesterday, you can't really do much about it.
No, just learn from it. That's how I see about failures. Failures are nothing more than an opportunity to learn. That is, if you learn from it. If you choose to do that thing over and over again, then, that's the definition of insanity, right?
Oh, definitely. And there is winning. There is winning and learning experiences. There is no failures. I tell people it's only a mistake if you did it once and you didn't learn from it, and then you do it second time again without changing anything.
Yeah.
And this is where the insanity comes, where a lot of people are just hoping something's going to change, but they don't want to change. They don't want to do things different. They just keep on doing the same things over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about this reset formula and reset method. What is that? How did that come about? And, what is it doing for the guys that you're working with?
The reset formula really came from, I guess about 7 years ago. I went once to Staples, and they said they were selling this. Well, I called it the reset button, but they called it the easy button. When it's this red button where you hit it and it says that was easy. And when I was in the financial services, I would often kind of have a conversation with my clients, and when I would ask them, say, what if tomorrow morning you woke up and all of your assets, where it would be your house, investments, just cars, everything that you ever owned was turned into cash. So now you're sitting and you have a bank account full of cash. Would you go back and repurchase everything that you ever owned? Like, basically, if you had a chance to reset your life, would you go back to what you had? And, I wouldn't say 100%, but, close to 99% of people would say, well, no, I would change. And probably I would do things quite different. And I said, so why aren't you doing that right now? And this kind of came about from the whole idea that we all have an opportunity every single day, every single morning to completely reset our life, to completely change how we're living and what we're doing. So the whole idea of the reset, that's kind of where it came from, was just asking that question of saying, hey, if I had the opportunity to, hit that reset button, would I choose to live my life different? Again, in theory, that sounds really great. We know that it's harder or more difficult to do in reality. But if we're not even thinking about it or talking about it, then it's not going to happen. And this is where a lot of people and a lot of men live in insanity, where they're just hoping something's going to change. But it doesn't. So when we're talking about the reset formula, it's, the letters are R-E-S-E-T, and the R stands for what I call reveal. And we spoke about this a little bit at the beginning. Is first you got to realize, where you are at, what's the truth, what's the reality. And so often when I talk to men, they're not really truthful with themselves. They're lying to themselves because they're just thinking, hoping that something's going to change tomorrow. And they don't realize that they're the ones that have the ability to make the change, and they kind of still keep on living their life the same way as it always was, hoping that something from outside is going to change, and they're not willing to do the change. I use the example, if somebody is sitting on a train that's, and to make it relevant, is sitting in a city, let's say, just call it, I'll just call it from around here, sitting in Toronto, and there is another city that's in complete opposite direction. Okay, and I usually use Sudbury as the example. And you're sitting on a train that's heading towards Sudbury, but you're believing that you're on a train heading the opposite direction, going to Toronto. you'll never get to Toronto because you're heading in the opposite direction. And often the most important part is to really realize, where are you really at? That's kind of the first step that I tell people. Hey, what's the truth? What's the reality? And the quicker you get to it, the easier it's going to be get to where you're going. So the E stands for expand. This is kind of the second step. Where is it that you're going? So first, where are you at? Where is it that you're going? Once you kind of have that vision or goal, what you want to do, you have to start putting together systems. And that's what S stands for, right? What is the process? What is it that you actually have to go out there and do? So put the plan together. The E stands for engage. Now you have to go and start doing some of those things. And the T in the reset formula stands for track. Once you get everything going, you need to start measuring. You need to start track things, because that's the only way you're going to improve things. And when it really came down to using the reset formula, when I looked at a lot of successful people that I've ever seen, they've used it, maybe not they didn't call it the reset formula, but they followed that, those same steps, reveal, expand, having system, having a plan, engage, and then track. And it becomes really that important to do these, to essentially live the life in that way, and using those, 5 steps to gain the success that somebody wants. And Wally, I tend to look at life from the perspective of, we live it in the 4 core areas. I know I've heard different on it. I look at it: faith, family, fitness, and finance. And pretty well everything that I do on a daily basis revolves around one of these areas. And even though they're all separate, they're all connected.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that, because, it's right in my tagline as well: Men of Abundance, the Pay It Forward community. And we're living a life of abundance in family, faith, finances, and fitness. And when I saw that, I was like, that's another reason why. I was like, man, this guy is like a mirror image of me, man. I dig it.
The only difference, and I want to tell you, maybe you looked at it this way, when we talk about faith, and I tell people, faith is not necessarily about, religious and beliefs. It's more about, hey, do you know who you are and why you are here? Because once you figure that out, life becomes easier. Family is really about a relationship, and fitness is about, who it is that you are as a man and growing. Well, the difference between those 3 and the last one is that the first 3 I call are made from glass. And maybe you've heard this analogy before. So it's like we have these balls, these 4 balls we're juggling. And faith, family, and fitness are made from glass. And if you drop one of them, if you're lucky enough, it might not shatter. But often I've met with a lot of men that, their families are, destroyed. They're not really healthy. They don't really know why they're here and some of the challenges that they have. The one that's finance, I call it, that was made from rubber. Right? You can drop. I've seen guys that were very successful at their jobs, and then through circumstances something happened. You can always go and pick that one up, because it's not that detrimental when something happens. But having the focus on the 3 other balls, faith, family, and fitness, it becomes very important for you to really be mindful and taking care of them more than the finance. And when I meet with a lot of men, a lot of guys, they focus on the finance like hawks, and then sometimes let the other 3 kind of drop. And it's unfortunate, because my view is that, hey, we can really live an abundant life and have success in all 4 of those areas to the same extent. We don't have to pick and choose. We get to have all of them.
Yeah, it's a counterbalance, and I completely agree with that. The first time I heard that analogy with the juggling the balls, and several of them being glasses, in the book The One Thing, with Jay Papasan and Gary Keller. In fact, I had a conversation with Jay Papasan on episode 45 of Men of Abundance. And it's exactly that. And there's many examples of that from top. It doesn't matter what the financial level you are. Dave Thomas helped out with getting Kentucky Fried Chicken started, and then founded Wendy's and other type of restaurants and stuff like that. He had an amazing lifestyle. He had an amazing business, but his family fell apart. His daughters despised him growing up because he was never home. So he dropped those balls, but the financial ball was bouncing all over the darn place.
And that's the sad part. And I think that the challenge is, and I'm sure you've ran into a lot of guys that maybe don't have the finance quite figured out, and they have the other ones, and there's always that pressure and in between them, and they just think, hey, if I can just go out there, make more money, everything's going to be all right. And it's like, no, man, like, you've got to keep all these things in check, because just having more money means bigger and larger problems. That's not going to solve some of the other challenges you have in the other areas. And from the perspective of having those four core areas, what I call it, living a four-dimensional life as opposed to, living one or two-dimensional life. And, some of those things, just not sure if we'll have time to get into details, but I've experienced, I'm working more on the finance side of things, and that's really what I'm focusing on now, helping, my clients. I've worked with a lot of financial advisors around that because that's kind of the target market that I'm working with. But you know what? 7 years ago, I was 12 years ago, I was 260 pounds. And then about 7 years ago, it's going to be actually 8 this year, I lost over 90 pounds. And again, it was just getting that right perspective about what really the truth is around certain things. And when, we start to live more on purpose, more in the, perspective of abundance, things do become a lot easier because people ask, how did you do that? I said, you know what? Losing 90 pounds was probably the easiest thing that I've ever done. And they're like going, hang on, this sounds like heresy. I said, no, because I finally understood about food and I learned information, and it wasn't a change of me working really hard at the gym and doing that. It was realizing what is causing the, causing the weight gain or the reason I was that way. And again, this is where, looking at the reset formula, the R stands for reveal. I learned the truth about food, and the example I use, without getting into too many details, I say, hey, well, if you're driving a car that runs on gasoline, you'd never think about going and putting diesel into it because it wouldn't run. Well, our bodies kind of work the same way, right? There is certain food that our body reacts in a certain way that's a lot healthier and better for us as opposed to some other foods. And for me, it was just learning what is benefit for my body as opposed to what's hurting my body, and I just excluded all the things that are not beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it takes a little bit of time. Everybody's different in that regard with the nutrition and stuff, because there's some people that have allergies and they don't realize what's going on, and you just start changing, get a little bit scientific about it, and we can get really deep on that conversation right there for sure. Because I've been in the health and fitness industry for quite some time and just been an enthusiast myself. But we are at the point, Daniel, where we're going to pay it forward to our abundant leaders. You ready to do that, man?
Yeah, 100%.
Outstanding. So share 1 to 3 actionable steps that men of abundance can take today. You've already shared a few, but let's break it all down right here.
Yeah, one of the things, and I want to just say, you mentioned the book, The One Thing. I tell you, that was probably the one book from all the other books that I've ever read around, personal development or just transformation, that has probably made the biggest difference in my life, because I think for a lot of us guys that are kind of overachievers and we want to do so many different things, realizing that, hey, again, kind of as I mentioned, the whole idea of swinging for singles in baseball, just what's the smallest thing you can do today that can get you and move you forward. So really focusing on that one thing that you can do and start to live your life from that perspective, right? If there is one thing that I get done today and it's going to move me forward, what is it that I need to get accomplished? Because often we have so many lists of 5, 15 things we need to do, and at the end of the week or even at the end of the month, we never get them done, and we just add more to it. So I know you ask 1 to 3, but I'm thinking, from the perspective of, and even going with the idea of the one thing, just figure out what's that one thing you want to get done today or even this week that just needs to be done, and make sure that, you really work on it and keep on focusing on it. And I'm not sure if we're going to say what kind of book somebody should go and read. I would encourage everybody to go and listen to your, I think you mentioned it was episode 46. Listen to that episode and go and read that book, because it can truly change somebody's life to start focusing on that one thing. What's the next thing that somebody needs to do to move them forward?
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely perfect. And that was episode 45. menofabundance.com/045. And go listen to that conversation too, guys, because Jay actually pulled a little practical joke on me that I share at the end of that episode with Jeff Woods, which is the little jokesters over there. But anyhow, great book, and I totally agree with you, and I'm glad that you just left it at the one thing, because that is a perfect action step for the guys to take today. So what daily habits make the biggest impact in your life?
For me, what I've started focusing on, and again, living, from the perspective of living life in the 4 core areas of life: faith, family, fitness, and finance. For me, it's always kind of focusing on those things and do one thing in those areas. So when it comes down to, for example, for faith, what I started doing now is just spending some time and meditating, because there are so many things that are happening all the time. So for me, it's just trying to keep it as simple as possible. What have I actually, done something for myself where I grow and actually start, relaxing and meditating a little bit more, just to get kind of, shut off some of the chatter. When it comes down to, family is, again, from the perspective of the one thing, just having that one person that I'm kind of focusing on, where it's my wife, that relationship that I want to, increase and have better, my wife, my kids, or somebody else that I can send a note or connect with them on a daily basis. When it comes down to, fitness, again, is really taking care of, my body and making sure that I get the proper nutrition, and that I also do something for my body, where it might be going for a run, going for a walk. And again, when it comes to finance, just find out that what's that one thing that, for me, that I need to do to move my business forward. And usually I kind of set these goals on a quarterly basis. So every 90 days, I kind of change them a little bit, and what I do, and how I set things up. Because when it comes down to morning routine, and I know there's tons of books written on there, what I always tell men is, hey, find out what works for you, and make it your own. Don't do it because somebody else tells you that it should be done this way, because now it just becomes something that you have to do. Really get connected with it, and figure out what works for you, and change it up a little bit, because routines, sometimes we get into routines and they're not necessarily the best thing that we're into, but we just think we're getting the benefit from it that we're not. So change things up as you go.
Yeah, excellent. And we already talked about a book that you would recommend for sure. Are there any other books that you'd specifically recommend to our abundant leaders, and if so, why?
You know what? Definitely the one thing, the other one that was introduced, and I've read it years back, and I was just speaking to somebody, and they said I think the name of it is the Magic of Thinking Big. And I think this goes some of the things we were talking about before. Just what is the vision, and some of the vision for my business that I have and that I'm looking at are kind of like what we're talking about, Elon Musk, sending somebody to the Mars. At this point, it just seems like such an insurmountable thing to do. But you know what? If we don't dream big, if we don't look at things from the kind of the bigger perspective, we'll never get to the results that we really want, because it's the bigger you think, the more you're going to achieve. I think that's really the key to everything.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been years since I've read that book, and that book is The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, PhD, yep. Dr. David Schwartz. Great book, man. I've got that one in a Foot Locker somewhere. I think it's in storage in Texas or something, because I held on to that one. That's a very good book. Thanks for recommending that one.
No problem.
Outstanding. So, what do you feel holds most people back from living a life of true abundance?
There is a poem from I think Marianne Williamson that says, "Our biggest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our biggest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." And I think it really speaks to me, because when I look at my life, and still for most of my life, I was kind of holding myself back, thinking by me not really standing up as the powerful man that I was created to be, having all of those. And I call them kind of, everybody I believe have these magic powers, the kind of things that make me different. I would kind of hold them back and not wanting to share them with the world. And even being here on, having this interview, it's just, sharing our kind of brightness that lives in all of us, out there. And I think key to that is that, for the men out there, start searching out, start finding out who it is that you are, and, don't be ashamed of that. I spoke with somebody. I had just a coaching call with somebody this morning, kind of onboarding a new client, and he kind of said he apologized for his. I just kind of, when he started shrinking down, I said, "Hey man, if you're really proud of that," and he says, "Yeah, I'm really good at customer service and what I do." I said, "Hey, just like go on the highest peak and shout that out there, because that's who you are. That's your magic. That's who that's who you're going to attract by you kind of shrinking down. You're not really helping anybody." So I think the biggest thing that I think what holds most people back is just that they don't realize how truly powerful we are and what we're able to accomplish. And the only way we're going to get there is when we just using that quote of when there's a fork in the road, just go and take it. Mm-hmm. Just keep on moving forward and start sharing your your kind of your magic or your brightness that's inside of you.
Yeah. Outstanding answer. What does living a life of abundance mean to you, Daniel?
For me, it's really realizing that, especially with the background that I shared, that, I have the opportunity to really do whatever I want whenever I want it. And to truly live, a life of freedom. And I think from the perspective of, and it was my wife, Marlene, that have kind of introduced me to this, coming from background of not living in a country that was free. She explained freedom to me this way. She said, freedom really is that you have the option to do whatever you want, but you also have the choice and the power to choose not to do certain things. And, where I came from, we didn't quite have that. I mean, we can go with whatever we want, but we knew right away what the consequences were. We couldn't go out there and speak against the government and say certain things because there would be major consequences for that. But I think it's not just having the ability to do whatever we want, but also being mindful of others around us and how it is kind of affecting everybody else, because it's not a life for, as long as it works for me, it's okay. It's kind of being mindful of the fact that freedom, even though you can do it, there is also consequences for some of those things that it might affect other people.
Wow, very good answer. Absolutely love that, man. So we're going to close this up, but before we do, what did we not talk about that you want to ensure that our abundant leaders get out of our conversation? And we are definitely going to have resetyourmoney.com linked up in the show notes. So feel free to share anything else that you'd like to direct our audience to.
I think the biggest thing is just feel the freedom that, we live in the world right now, that there is really nothing holding us back. From technology, how it has shaped our world and where we're at. And again, we mentioned Elon Musk so much when we're looking at some of the things that, he's doing. If there is something that is really burning inside of you, just, start sharing that with people. And it now has become so easy. And I appreciate you having this, this podcast. I'm kind of working on a podcast that I'm doing for, strictly working with financial advisors, just helping them to kind of let that, that power that's inside of all of us out there and start sharing with others. Because, we shared some of the stories, and you mentioned, what you just experienced being in, the former republics of Soviet Union and all of those countries. I can't even say all those names right now, but you just doing that and sharing it, you will connect with someone, and we don't know, who's going to be listening to this and who's kind of listening and watching. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing, is that, I believe that we will never truly know how much we actually impact other people around us. And kind of reminds me of the movie, it's black and white movie, It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh yeah, love it.
The Christmas, that whole idea. And every once in a while, and it kind of comes across my mind, and I'm thinking, I know what, we're exactly like he was. We don't realize how much we're impacting somebody's life until we're not there anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think from the perspective of, as we said, what's holding most people back is just like, you just need to go out there and kind of let your brightness inside of you kind of shine, and don't get, one of my coaches told me, he says, Daniel, if on a daily basis you don't get somebody upset at you because they don't agree with what you're saying, you're not working hard enough in what you're supposed to be doing. Not everybody's going to agree with you. Just make sure that you're focused on what it is that you're supposed to be doing out there, and just go out there and put yourself out there for others to see.
Yeah, great advice. Absolutely love that advice as well. So, like I said, we're going to have resetyourmoney.com linked up. Is there any other way that you'd like for our abundant leaders to reach out to you?
One of the things that I really focus on, as I mentioned, I do work with a lot of financial advisors, and I kind of help them to scale their practice. I could work with anybody, and what I teach, some of the marketing and things that I teach at financial advisors to deal with really works for everybody. If somebody wants to reach out, resetyourmoney.com is the best website for me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook. I'm actually putting together a group for financial advisors, the Ultimate Advisor, on Facebook. Again, just kind of reaching out to financial advisors as the business owner to be able to go and scale their business, and using LinkedIn primarily so that they can go and connect with their clients that they want to deal with. Because again, technology is here to really help us to grow our businesses. And at the end, I know that we met on Facebook, but there is a lot of different social media, and you just have to figure out what works best for you and what's the best way for you to connect with your ideal clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll definitely have all that linked up. I'll connect with you as well on LinkedIn if I'm not done so already, and I'll have all of that linked up in the show notes. So don't worry about writing that down, guys. I'll have it all linked up in the show notes at Men of Abundance. Just search Daniel and you'll find the episode in there. Daniel, man, it has been an amazing conversation. I look forward to connecting with you even further offline as well, and learning from each other, man. So go out and live your life of abundance and continue paying it forward, man.
All right, it's great, Wally. Again, I appreciate this opportunity to share with your listeners, and that has been a pleasure. And yeah, I know that men is listening to this, and a lot of the shows that you've already done will be able to go out there and do what it is that they were created to do.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Absolutely. Just take action, guys. Aloha. All right, guys, I'd love to hear your lessons learned from this conversation and any other for that matter. And men, specifically, you can go to menofabundance.com and click on the Members Only tab. Get access to our closed Men of Abundance community on Facebook. That closed community is specifically set up so that we can continue this conversation in an environment where it's just us guys having the conversation. We're the only ones in there talking about it, and we're sharing other conversations and asking specific questions that we may need help with in our lives. And when I say we, I mean me as well. I'm on my journey just like you are. I may be a little bit further, and I might be a little bit behind some of you as far as this is concerned. So everybody has something to contribute, and we all have much to learn. So go get access to the Men of Abundance community at menofabundance.com. Click on the Members Only tab and request access. Now, go out and live your life of abundance, and make sure to pay it forward.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.